Hello and welcome. Welcome to Insight TV. I'm your host, Helen Kerrison, and I'm the founder of Insight in Business, and I'm a conscious discovery expert. And my passion is sharing how everyone can live the life they love when they know how. They can live a conscious life and a happy life. Now, on Insight TV, we explore thoughts and ideas. We share experiences, and we'll gain insights, and new things will come up. We'll discuss stuff that's been around for a while as well. And this is really where we look inside in order to see outside, and vice versa. And we're now into the second series of broadcasts, and this series is all about the energetic connection. Each week we'll be looking at a different aspect of that. And today, with my special guest, who I'll introduce you to in just a second, we're going to be exploring conscious connectivity. Intriguing. Okay, but before I introduce you to my guest, I'd like to share three concepts with you. And they are, this is the first one. Happiness comes from connecting with your inner self. Okay, the second one is, you are responsible for your happiness, and you decide how happy you want to be. And the third one is, there are no limits when you learn how to be happy. Okay, so on to my guest for today, and it's a great pleasure and honor to welcome to Insight TV the very wonderful Floyd Carlson. Now, Floyd is the Operations Director for Cisco's Europe, Middle East, Africa and Russia organization. And his team is responsible for delivering the new capabilities, solutions, tools and policy. Now, Floyd has been leading teams for over 26 years. And he joins us today from Brussels, Belgium, which is wonderful. It means we're both in the same time zone, which makes things a lot easier. So a very, very big welcome to the show, Floyd.
Thank you very much, Helen. Really appreciate being here, and look forward to having a great discussion with you tonight.
Yeah, I think so, and I've been really looking forward to this as well. Now, we've talked a little in the past about business and consciousness and so on, and the theme for the show is about conscious connectivity, and I suppose, you know, the first thing to ask is, okay, what is conscious and what is connectivity, and what we mean by that. Now, I'd like to ask you that question, and in relation to, actually in relation to whatever you want it to be in relation to. there's no rules here, you know. Whatever, however we want to talk about it. So, for you, connectivity and consciousness, where does that sit for you?
Yeah, thank you, Helen. So when I think of consciousness, you know, to me, you know, I put it in terms of leadership, and I look at somebody who is a conscious leader is somebody who is setting a positive example for others. That means they're able to check their ego at the door. They do those steps that are needed, you know, the internal work, and they bring a change to people. Now, if they're able to do a change that makes a person able to have a shift in their life, that's brilliant. If they're able to help that person make a shift, and then that person goes on and makes a shift, and this continues to get passed to person, to me, that is one of the ultimate levels of leadership and being conscious, is when you're able to make that positive shift in people. Now, when I look in terms of connectivity, you know, there's the interconnection connectivity. So are you doing the work yourself? Are you connected within yourself? And do you see that, you know, your path towards happiness actually resides within yourself? An analogy of this could be is, you know, imagine that there's, you know, a ship on the water, You have the water line, and you have all those things above the water line, and you have those things below the water line. A lot of people, spend their time and their decisions and things that they do worrying about those things that are on top that are visible. This is how is the furniture stacked on the top of the deck? Where is the position of the flag? What is the color scheme? Where is the position of the light boat? These are those things where you can get caught up in, the external appearance. Do I need to have more things? Am I after possessions? The thing of it is the real work to be done in that real connectivity is when you realize the real work is the stuff underneath, and that where you can actually make that shift yourself. A little later, I'll tell a personal story about, a shift that I had where a conscious leader, was able to reach out to me and give me that type of feedback that you rarely get. But when you do get it and you're actually doing the inward work on yourself and you're receptive to it, that combination becomes so powerful. So connectivity is within yourself, but it's also with others. When you and I, or when others who are on similar paths, or just when you get two people who share something in common, that energy that builds is just fascinating to see. The time flies, like I'm sure this call is going to fly, and your energy just expands in that discussion.
Well, that's it, isn't it? It's that energetic, there's that energetic connection there somehow, and everything just flows. And I'm sure you found it in this life that when you are in that space, when everything is flowing, it's just the most amazing experience, and you're on the right path.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the conscious, I loved when you were talking about the consciousness and leadership. This is a subject that is at the basis of what I do, and the consciousness starts with you. With the leaders of our own lives first and foremost. And it's like you say, when you do that inner work and become conscious of who you are, of connecting with yourself, with the relationship with yourself, then you're able to be inspiring, and have those shifts take place in other people, and that's leadership.
And just an example around this is when, and let me ask you the question is, when you think of leaders that you have worked for in the past, how many come to mind as somebody who actually, one, you'd want to work for again, but two, is somebody who actually was able to give and help you with that shift?
Yeah.
Is there a certain percentage that comes to your mind?
It's pretty low.
Yeah, that's what I tend to find when I ask people this question is, it's normally around 27% or less. These were leaders who they work for that actually, move them that they would want to work for again. And now, I guess we could ask the question is, what makes that difference? What helps these people that they're the most memorable in our life? Now, we also remember the ones that were the worst case too, So, yeah, but we won't talk about that. But the thing is what tends to make those people different? And this is where consciousness comes in. Either they do it by choice, or their actions actually lead them to that course where you'd say, yes, they were connected to themselves, they understood themselves extremely well, and they knew their strengths, they knew their downfalls or pitfalls, and they continued to focus to be the best leader they could. And they made that conscious decision. So it wasn't based on the title they had. It wasn't based on position. They realized and they made the decision, which is the key shift. I want to be a leader, and I want to be the best at it. And just by nature, then, they're going on that path to improve their leadership. And as they do, wow, you get a fantastic example. And this is what the world is looking for, is these great examples of leaders, because we learn mostly by what we see. If the people, who, examples you could probably give as somebody who didn't step out. You ask them the question, how did you learn what you've done or are doing? They'll tend to say, well, this is how I was taught by somebody else. So, it all comes down to, again, where, the leader makes that conscious decision that they want to be a leader and be the best they can. And then from that, as they continue to work on themselves, everyone around them benefits.
Yeah, that's so true. And the idea that it is a conscious decision. And then what happens if a leader is unable for one reason or another to make that conscious decision? Then we have a sort of a potential, we have all of that ability, all that passion, all that inspiration that is not actually realized. Have you experienced that? Have you seen others in that situation of having that leadership talent, if you like, the passion and the ability to be a leader, but not actually doing it?
I've seen a couple examples of that, and I've had the opportunity to, mentor some people where, we actually would have a discussion around this. They had the title, they had definitely, the ability, and they just didn't make that shift in their mind. So they were an effective manager, which meant they could effectively do the tasks that were required to be successful and have the team successful. But they didn't yet make that shift of, now I'm a leader. Because there is a difference between a manager, somebody who is quite effective at doing that, and somebody who is also then a leader. Because that decision point makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and in my work, I've experienced with people the blocks that we can come up against, and those things that keep us stuck and prevent us from making these steps and making these decisions. We may want to do them, and we may think, yes, I want to step into my leadership shoes, if you like, but there's something subconsciously inside that's preventing it.
Well, and that's quite interesting. If you take a look at what we tend to do as every human, 95% of what we do is actually a habit or a subconscious program. Take a simple example as you learn to drive a car. At first, you have to put conscious effort into it, especially, how you're going to shift and things like that, when to shift. But as you start to rehearse that over and over and over, and it becomes a habit, you rarely now have to think about when you're going to shift your car. Matter of fact, you're doing many different things at the same time. So only 5% of what we actually do is conscious. 95% is the routines. So sometimes it's habits, that get people into where they're at. It can be, blocks, limiting beliefs, and there's many tools out there that actually help in making some of these visible. You can do something simple as a fear inventory. Take a look. What are those things that are causing you to be scared? Or what are some of the things that you continually start to see the same thing happening in your life over and over and over? You get stuck in a pattern. These start to give you awareness. Now, I'm a strong proponent of using a journal and writing this down, get these thoughts down into paper. And think about, geez, why is this particular event continuing to happen in my life over and over and over? And start to do some, deep thinking into it. Because what this will do is this helps to bring awareness. And awareness is half of the opportunity to make the change. Because with awareness, you're able to make other decisions or choices. And with those other decisions and choices, you get a different result. Then it's about measuring the result to see, are you getting what you really want? And if not, you continue to make this natural change. So the key is truly around this awareness. And, these are just a couple of techniques that we covered here. We could discuss emotional fitness therapy, which is EFT, which is a way to actually prevent some of those blocks. Because just imagine, and this is something I've been thinking about in the work environment. If you have, say, an account manager, and they go out to a big sale, and they think everything is going well, and then all of a sudden something happens, and that particular deal, they do not get it. Now, maybe or maybe not, they're going to pick up some thoughts or feelings around that situation. The thing of it is each time they now go on another call, these same situations are going to come with them. You could call it baggage or blocks. And if the same thing happens again, well, if we're looking at this externally, we go, oh, they're in a rut. Don't worry about it. You'll get the next deal, the next opportunity. The point being is, when does all of the stuff that they're picking up actually become a block to their real success? And if they can figure this out early in their, before it actually becomes a habit or becomes part of them or becomes a block, by having this awareness, they can take the steps then hopefully to reduce it.
That is so important, so fundamentally important, is that awareness.
Absolutely.
It's the first place to start, right? And so often we just don't know what we don't know. And so it's about, for me, it's really about awareness and being open to actually not accepting, but acknowledging, being open to allowing something new. And, when you mentioned EFT, that's a sort of a prime example, that's something that maybe a lot of people, it's quite different and quite unusual, and something what they won't have experienced before. And certainly in a work environment, it's not something that is widely used or recognized, but it can be so beneficial at being able to connect with the subconscious. And that's where all the crap, if you excuse my language, lies, right? It's about unlearning stuff and getting rid of stuff rather than learning. But often what we do is we just pile more and more stuff on top.
Absolutely. And I do think that there is more, opportunities like this happening in the workforce. So around 3 years ago or so, Natasha, who you know quite well, and myself were interviewed for a Belgium HR magazine. And one of the top 10 tools that they were highlighting, for a manager's toolkit was EFT. And so we were both giving a story about how utilizing a technique like EFT, helped us. I actually used an example, I think, of preparing for a marathon. Because, just think, if you can take out performance blocks in anything that you're doing, be it your, personal sports that you're doing, but also your work performance, it can be applied anywhere to help you take away some blocks or baggage that's preventing you from really going to where you want to go with your performance.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great little tool, and give everybody who's watching just a little bit of information towards the end of the show if they want to find out more about EFT. It's very, very simple. So being able to connect with yourself and know yourself is the first step, the fundamental step to being able to connect and relate to other people. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's critical for any change or transformation that you're wanting to do. Like we gave with some of the examples around awareness. The more you understand yourself and understand your strengths and those areas that you'd like to work on, the better off you're going to be to help set yourself up for success with your change. For an example, there's this company in Australia called Linked Up International. And they do a a profile of you called instinctive drives. And what it does is it will, basically tell you what are those natural things that drive your motivation. And, there's other techniques out there that you could utilize. You can use the Myers-Briggs type indicator, or you could use from Gallup the Strength Finder 2.0. Again, all things to help you to better understand yourself. And there's a lot of material out there then that helps you to either coach people who, once you know what their type is or their strengths, or in this case their instinctive drives, how to get the best out of them. You take away immediately that having to learn somebody in a new role as someone comes to work with you, or you're working with somebody that's 6 months. But getting back to the individual part is, if you know that there's something that is a natural drainer of your energy, if you're trying to set up your change or your transformation where you're relying on having to do something that will be counterintuitive to just how you are, these things help you with that awareness to set up your plan to make it as most successful as possible. Some people make their goals and their plans for change, so impossibly high that you almost have to pass away to be able to achieve it. And you'll always be seeking and trying to achieve, where if you know yourself, this will help you in your change to set it up for bigger success.
And this is all part of actually being able to trust yourself, isn't it? To be able to trust that what you're feeling, what maybe your body is telling you physically, what your gut, what your instinct, what your intuition is telling you. It's about trusting that.
Yes.
Because it's not wrong. Your body will never lie to you about its situation, and your instincts, your intuition is always right. But the thing is, we've sort of lost touch of how to connect with that, and it's sort of, particularly in the work environment, it's not seen as sort of relevant to business.
I think there's more focus happening. There's some great books out there, and there's some good studies. One of them, which I'll highlight, and actually have it here on my note card, so I'll take a look at it. It's from Tom Rath and Jim Harter, and both from Gallup Consulting. And the article that they put together is called "The Economics of Well-Being." Oh, right. And what's really powerful is in here you start to see the real metrics behind well-being, and as you see that there is a real connection to your bottom line and the productivity and the well-being that having your employees feeling that they definitely are being taken care of and have that well-being. Some of the stuff in this paper they highlight, it talks about absenteeism, is obviously reduced. Healthcare costs are absolutely reduced. And there's just a few of the many, powerful examples that are actually in that paper that they wrote that shows the importance of focusing on well-being. And I think, a lot of companies are picking that up and going that step. How do I do the best for my employees? They look at them as a corporate athlete. Here's somebody who's coming in. How do we continue to help them to grow and be, a full person for their entire time?
Yeah, it's the talking about employees, people, and a lot of companies say, oh, people are the center of our business, are the most important part of our business, but the behaviors don't show that. But of course, what is a business without people? There is no business without people. It's really, really fundamental. And you're right. You know, there's beginning to be more of an interest and more of an uptake in this whole area of consciousness, and as it relates to business, because we're one person. This is something that I found a lot in what I do. You know, we talk about work-life balance. Well, actually, I don't talk about work-life balance anymore because it's just life. It's just life, and some of that time we spend working. Some of our life we spend working, some we don't. And I think sometimes the disconnect can be with thinking that we have to be one thing in work and another thing at home and another person here and another person there. And that leads to huge amounts of overwhelm and stress. And so, you know, getting more connected with actually the one person we are on the inside is going to help deal with all of these different roles, if you like, that we have to play as well.
Yeah, I do believe, you know, that congruency that you're touching on here is so important. I was mentoring one person, and you know, they believe that they had to have this persona when they came into the work environment, that I need to behave a certain way if I want to progress. And so one of the questions that I asked is, okay, well, what is your brand? What are people telling you? Mm. And the feedback was exactly supporting, well, you're behaving or you're taking on the characteristics of this persona. And so then, you know, my follow-on question is this how is this how you are at home, or is this how you are around your family and friends? And they said, oh, absolutely not. So we worked on, you know, the beliefs that were associated with this. And once they were able to, you know, find that happy connection point of where they were congruent, both, you know, in the work environment, home, and with their friends and family, you could see the immediate change. You know, we spoke then around a month later, and all of the concerns, you know, the feedback they were getting in the work environment were now gone. You know, so that congruency is so important. And this is part of just everyone's, you know, conscious living, is the more congruent you are, the more simpler it is. You know, trying to act in a role or be somebody you're not is going to add additional stress to your life.
Yeah, it's hard work. It's hard work. You know, and it's like anything. It can be hard, but then you sort of you reach that level where you tolerate it, and it becomes normal. You know?
Absolutely. You know, then once you have a new norm, you know, you tend to think, well, this is how I'm supposed to always feel, you know, stressed or whatever, which you can even lead to other things. Yeah. Until, you know, they can actually be shown another way, either through, you know, meditation or through one of the many techniques that are out there. And then it's like, well, now, wow, you know, I'm no longer feeling like that, and I'm feeling something different. That means I can now see an opportunity. And that is then when you have that chance to make, you know, a turnaround, is when you see that this isn't the norm. There's other options out there.
It's so often the case, isn't it? You know, when you're in the middle of it, you can't see the wood for the trees. You know, you have to be able to take that step back, and sometimes the opportunity is there to take the step back, but it's a fearful step. You know, because we all get very comfortable with what we're familiar with.
Well, and here's where, you know, a good confidant, you know, either a really great friend, you know, building the team around you to be supportive, where you can actually have these type of dialogues, and, you know, picking up a coach. You know, all the big athletes, you know, they all have coaches, even when they're at the top of their game. And the coach or mentor, all that, you know, just goes to help you, you know, ask some of those tough questions.
Yeah, it gives you perspective, doesn't it? You know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, a different perspective, and I've experienced this a lot in my life, as I'm sure you have, and those around us have. Once you take another viewpoint, or you're open to that, then things change. I was interested when you mentioned meditation and various techniques, and curious to know how you use these in your own life and how it's helped in your role as leader.
All great questions.
You see, you can tell this is not scripted, right? We don't know what's going to come up, which is the beauty of doing this program.
So a lot of the things that I talk about, or I'll use with mentoring or discuss with people, it's all been by personal trial and error. And the thing which really started me on my journey was actually a situation in Desert Storm, and so back in Desert Storm, I had a scenario where I had thought I had tripped a booby trap, a mind, and by doing this, when they say you see your life flash before your eyes, in this case, I saw all these images, and the images were of people who were most important in my life, and the thing which was actually quite amazing is they're all in their happiest moments, and again, it's just like a flash. And there was this interesting one scene, and the scene is I actually saw a picture of a young boy who was around 3 or 4, a little blonde-haired boy, and that was the one picture that stuck in my mind, because I just didn't realize who that was. The thing of it is, at the time, my partner was actually pregnant with our first child. We didn't know the sex at that time or anything, and when he was that age, he looked identical to the image that I had seen that day. And so this actually started me into my journey, because I had a chance to see the future. And through this, I realized that start with the things that are most important in your life. How do you want to be remembered, and how do you want to live your life? So this has started me on my journey. And when we talk about things like meditation, what I have found is by experiencing it and trying it. At first, when I first sat down to meditate, I was like, wow, I got all these thoughts running through my mind. But as you're able to, find techniques to calm down that inner voice, so you're not constantly hearing the chatter, and you're able to go into yourself and just have that moment where there is no voice. You find this stillness and this peacefulness. And what I find is that such a refreshing and invigorating thing to me that, I work this into my schedule. So if you want to achieve something and make it a habit, you need to practice it, and you need to schedule it, because what gets scheduled gets done. So for me, I meditate in the morning and I meditate in the evening, because I get so much from it. In the morning it sets me up for success for the day, and in the evening it helps me to deconnect, from the day, so I'm not taking that with me when I go to sleep. And what I find is I sleep so much better, and I have just a more calmness, and that calmness then leads to less stress, and that then you have all the benefits of having less stress in your life.
Yeah, there's a huge sort of knock-on effect, isn't there?
Oh yes.
When you can do, you can take that time for that stillness, and it really is, like you say, it's a matter of deciding, like we talked about earlier. You decide, you choose to do it, and I've got a sort of an idea, a thought in my head that whatever whatever we're not changing in our life, we're choosing. So if life is hectic, you're running around, and you know, so many people will say, well, I don't have time to meditate. You know, if you're not changing and making time to meditate, then you're choosing not to. It sounds a bit harsh, but I think that really is the way that it is, and it's just a choice, yes or no. You know, and you know, I don't know about you, but I started with doing 5 minutes, and that seemed like a heck of a long time when I first started meditating. You know, but you start with 5 minutes.
And that's all. And that's all it takes. You know, just do something to get the momentum, you know, going in your life. And it's always interesting, you know, because you mentioned, you know, people say, well, I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to do that. Every time, you know, you open your mouth and those words come out, those will start to give you all of those beliefs that are holding you back. There's a great book out called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. Yeah. And in there's a chapter that's focused around what he calls Einstein time. And it really comes down to time and pressure is something that we put on ourselves. Mm-hmm. And when you can make that shift and realize you have the time and make those things that are most important to you in your life and schedule those, that is when you're going to make the shifts, make the changes, at least achieve the things that are most important to you. This last weekend, I finished an audio book called Zen Habits, a short little book. There's a blog, and he was encouraged by his readers to come out with a book. So he took some of his best blog posts, and he, you know, put it into a book. And I really, you know, loved a lot of the concepts in the book, you know, about simplicity and decluttering your life. And one of the ones, you know, he talked about in there in planning your week is he calls it the most important things, you know, so MITs. And if you picture each day as a bucket, and each of these MITs, so say you have 3 or 4 for the week, you want to put those in the bucket first, because each day, guess what? It's going to get filled up with pebbles and sand and overflow with everybody else's priorities. And at the end of the day, end of the week, you can go, wow, look at all the great things that I have achieved. But yet you may not feel fulfilled because those big things that are important to you, such as taking the time to meditate or just be in nature or to journal or to spend time with family, friends, or whatever actually helps you, you know, to have that connection. Put those big rocks, those most important things first into the different buckets. Plan that then in your calendar. Make that the first thing you do that day, because, you know, all the other stuff will come.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the sort of the added to that also is that sometimes we have the important things, we don't do them first. We don't get them done. And so then to ask yourself, okay, well, you know, what is there I need to do before that? Because so often, you know, we don't do them, and there's a reason why we don't do them. We're not consciously aware of that reason. But it's there, and that's what's driving. It's subconscious, and it drives behaviors. If you can get to that underlying one, then you can actually get around to doing these things which you know are important. You know, so often the really important things are the one we have the most difficulty doing. You know?
Right, and that might be actually something to go ahead and journal or to analyze on, is if I did achieve this, what am I afraid of? What could happen if I do this? Because sometimes people may be scared that if I actually do achieve that, then I may not have my story to tell anymore. You know, my story is I have this pain, and guess what? This is now my identity, and if I did something to, you know, release that, and I no longer had, you know, that to talk about, you know, what am I going to discuss?
Yeah, absolutely. There's often a sort of a hidden benefit, to hanging on to the old stuff, to hanging on to the stuff that does keep us in that place. Because, as you say, it's our identity. It's who we've become.
Yeah, it reminds me of, I was listening to a program from Louise Hayes from Hayes House Books, and it was around the power of your words. And she had made the decision that she was no longer going to get caught up in chit-chat about other people, and be in those type discussions. And in the program, she says, when I made the decision and I was able to stop doing that, for the next 6 months, I had nothing to talk about.
I think that is so good and so honest of her as well.
Oh, yes.
I think that's a great thing to do, and also not to ever say anything negative.
Yeah.
And as soon as something negative is coming out, you stop, and it's amazing how quiet your day becomes. Talk about peace. You have external peace, the outer peace, then you just have to have the inner peace. It's really, really fascinating, this stuff, and, taking this into work and bringing it to people who maybe have not had the experience before must be extremely rewarding.
It definitely is. And what I find that works the most is just telling stories. And I had one person who I was working with, and they had a scenario where they had really strong neck and back pain to the fact that they had to go off work for 2.5 months. And when they came back, I asked, so what did you do to overcome the pain? And they said, well, traditional, I rested and physical therapy. And I asked, did you address any of the emotions behind it? And they said, well, absolutely no. And so we just shared a story, and this led to an opportunity where they found a coach on EFT, as we talked about earlier, and they were able to go in and find what actually was causing them to have pain related to an emotion, to an event in their past. They were able to clear the block, and the person has not had that recur. And matter of fact, they were able to clear other stuff, and you could actually see, the change that had overall on their attitude and how they then performed. That everything is interconnected, as we were talking about being congruent. And so as they were able to feel better and release some of the emotion from past events, that reflected also in their performance in the work environment. And that's what makes me so enthusiastic and excited to see and be able to use these type tools and give this type of tell these stories to people to help them to make that shift in their life.
I think it's absolutely wonderful, and I applaud what you're doing and who you are and what you're bringing into the world and into the workplace. And I know you're in the middle, or maybe coming towards the end, I think, of writing a book. So I don't know whether you want to just give a few words about that. I don't know. Have you an idea of when this is going to be complete, or is it?
Yeah, if things go well, and things have been going pretty good so far. It's one of those things, to write a book, it takes some time and to fit it in, and scheduling it like I do. If everything goes well, hopefully it'll be out this October.
Oh, wonderful!
So,
wonderful.
But I did have an opportunity to write a story that was in a book that did get published, and it gives more insight into the story I told about the experience I had on the battlefield in Desert Storm. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to mention her book, because it's a collection of different stories, and she made it for women entrepreneurs, and so I
know who you're going to talk about. Very dear friend.
Yes, so Sue Maggot And she's now, the book is actually be coming out in paperback this month, and she has a book launch planned. And now the title is Believe in You, Believe in Your Story.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely brilliant, and it's available on Amazon.com in Kindle version. Paperback is coming out, and in there I have a story called The Story that talks about exactly that story and those daily disciplines that I do and apply to help me get to where I want to be in my life.
That's amazing, Floyd. Thank you very much. And is there an email address, some way that people can connect with you if they want to connect with you and share some stuff and just pick your brains a bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. It's floyd.carlson@skynet.be.
Okay, so floyd.carlson@skynet.be. It's been a pleasure. 45 minutes, 46 minutes just goes like that. So I've really enjoyed sharing with you and hearing the amazing things that you're doing with consciousness in your own life, with your inner work, and how you're bringing that out into the world, and particularly into the business world, and how everybody around you who you're connected with is benefiting from that. So absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're more than welcome. So that's it for another show. Thanks to Floyd. It's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you to everybody who's been watching us live. And the recording will be up shortly. Same place on my website, HelenKerrisonTV.com. You can get the recording if you miss this. Just a few words now about the next show. The next show will be on Tuesday, the 23rd of April. And I'll be joined by the amazing Linda Dyer. If you know Linda, then you'll know what I mean. She's an absolutely amazing lady, NLP master, trainer, and practitioner. And she's going to be with me on the show talking about a whole load of stuff around energetic connection, clearing limits, clearing blocks, and so on. So you don't want to miss that one. It'll be a little bit earlier than we normally have the show because Linda is based in Australia, and I just couldn't see her getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to do a live show. So we'll be broadcasting at 10 in the morning instead of 8 in the evening and that's CE2, Central European Time. So just left for me to say thank you once again. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Floyd. You can connect with me at HelenKerrison.com and also by email, helen@helenkerrison.com. And always really, really pleased to hear from you, get your feedback and any questions that you want to ask. So that's it. Have an absolutely wonderful rest of your day wherever you are. And I look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks.